ladies and gentlemen. Today we will be replacing an AC compressor tensioner pulley on my 2004 Chevrolet Silverado. Let's get into it. In-depth procedure on any car is you're basically always going to be working in the hood. So basically, you want to open up the engine bay. Now my little handle is down here. All right, now we're getting into the engine. All right. Okay. You see this big fucking clusterfuck of an engine bay with basically no working room, but don't worry, we don't need to work up anything in here. By the way, this ground wire is what makes my engine run. If this wasn't plugged in, my spark plugs wouldn't fire, so just wanted to let you guys know that. But basically, what we need to fix is like all the way down in the fucking depths of the engine. So we need to take apart this entire intake system. We need to take off this intake that has the mass airflow sensor. We need to take off this fan shroud, and then we need to take the serpentine belt off. And then underneath all of that, underneath here, we gotta take off this skid plate right here, this black one, and then we can get access to our pulley that we need to replace. So if I had a recommendation for you, I would say you should probably turn off the engine before you put it in your hand and you probably chew it up and have to go to the emergency room. Operations, as I said, is taking off this intake. So there's going to be one screw here, and there's going to be one screw here holding on these hose clamps. And before you can even get to that, we actually need to take off this beauty cover on the engine. So this is an 8mm, and these are also 8mm screws. So you can use an 8mm socket on these, or you can use a flathead screwdriver. I'm gonna use an 8mm socket. Walk over here to my mess of tools in my garage. You wanna get yourself a nice ratchet. And then we're going to need a normal socket set. I bought this at Walmart. By the way, if you need a cheap socket set, Hyper Tough from Walmart's pretty good. An 8mm, a 10mm, and a 15mm. Oh, and by the way, you're definitely going to want an extension because otherwise you won't be able to get this nut out unless you have a deep socket 8mm. So just be sure to have one of these handy. And now that we have all that ready, we're gonna put our 8mm on, put our extension on, put our ratchet on off, and then we're just gonna get this out, because it's only plastic that's being held on. It just comes right off, reveals the dirty top of the engine. Right here, got ourselves an 8mm screw. More getting this intake off on the actual throttle on the engine. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but we'll get to that when we get to that. This one on the mass airflow sensor over here, I think you can see it. This one, same thing, not really hard to get off. All right, so now you got those loosened. There's gonna be these little plastic clips right here that hold on these radiator hoses. So you're gonna have yourself a screwdriver because you're gonna have to pry one in and pull the clip down to let this come apart. Once messy garage again, and grab ourselves a screwdriver to remove this plastic clip. You just kind of want to shove the screwdriver in there, and then eventually you'll hear a click, and then it'll just come apart. And then over here, you're gonna want to pull off this hose, and then same thing with this guy right here. We got it, and now the clip is off. So now this radiator hose is disconnected. I mean, they're all basically disconnected. Now we can pull our mass airflow sensor part of the intake off. Just pull it off, and then the hose will just come right off like that. Connect from here, get that off. It's the biggest pain in the ass, but you can get it off relatively easily. And yep, this whole intake is one big assembly. Make sure you don't lose this rubber piece right here. This is what actually like seals the air going into the engine. And you might be like, fantastic, we did it. No, we essentially have to take out these two bolts now on both sides of the radiator right here. Oh, fantastic, this radiator piece is cracking. So you gotta take those off, and then there's 4 push pins that are down here. There's one there, one there. Same thing on the other side, one there, and one here. You want a 10mm socket, that's why I grabbed that one. Once you break it loose, it's just gonna come right out. I'm just gonna throw this over here with my other parts. All right, this one's good. And now those are off. We can pull this hose back, Pull that hose back. That's one good assembly. And now we're exposed to our giant clutch fan and belt drive. But you're gonna need a 15mm, and you're gonna stick your ratchet onto this tensioner right here. You are going to put the ratchet back as far as you can, and then you're gonna pull this down as much as you can. And then now we can pull this belt out, and now we've got our belt out. Well, our serpentine belt. And so after all that now we have to go underneath the engine, and now we have to go take out the skid plate so we can access the pulley, the crankshaft pulley, which goes to the AC compressor. So now that we're underneath here, you're gonna find that there's 2 bolts on the bottom of the skid plate right here. And then there's gonna be 3 at the top. 1, 2, 3. 15mm on here again. These are all 15mm. Just keep in mind that when you take these out, they're probably going to be rusted if it's anything like my truck, which, considering these cars are now like 20 years old, they probably are. So it might take some persuasion, but you'll be able to get it out pretty easily. Once you break it, it's broken loose. Now, up inside, we have access to our crankshaft pulley, which is this big monstrosity. This is where the main serpentine belt ran that we took out on top. And then the small teeth in the back are for the AC compressor belt, which what we're replacing is this tensioner right here. They bolt here, right behind like these brake lines, and then there's another bolt on the other side. So after about 20 minutes of getting my hands extremely dirty and, you know, using some WD-40, which is right there, we have managed to get the old tensioner out. Do the exact same thing, which in our case, yes, it is exactly the same. So now we just got to put this bad boy back on. And then now you can watch me put in this belt from the top while I go on the bottom. And now after we've done all of that underneath, it's time to put the serpentine belt back on. And that's how you do the belt drive. Now you're gonna grab your 15mm socket. Remember, turn it back as much as you can. Push that forward as much as you can. Slip the belt on. Make sure the belt is on securely on all of the drives. The water pump / idler pulley, it's on pretty well. It's on fine on the water pump. The idler pulley, I would like to move it back a little bit more. And we're just gonna slide this belt back just a tiny bit. And those are lined up pretty good. And now we just look. I remember I said make sure everything's on right. The power steering pump is not on. Take our tensioner, turn it, fix the belt. All right, power steering's on now. Alternator's on still. Water pump is on. Idler pulley's on fine. Tensioner pulley's on fine. This part, the crankshaft pulley, since it runs everything, is also on flush. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you put on a serpentine belt. So now we can take our fan shroud, and essentially it's just going to be the same process of putting it back together as it was taking it apart. We got that in now. Okay, that side's in. Alright, that side's on. And that side's on. So now this is sitting flush. That side's in. That side's in. Now we're just going to take all these little hoses and stick them back in their places. This big hose right here up front, remember I talked about this in the beginning. I'm just going to clip that one back in. These are in now. Now I just got to put in these nuts